Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
One of the most important relationships in our lives is the one with that person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. We're talking about your marriage. When you want your marriage to be fantastic, fulfilling, just feel good for both of you, well, we're going to dig into that today. And that's courtesy of just an amazing, one of the best, I really feel, in the entire country. He is just amazing as a life coach. And Dan Clark joins us once again. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Oh, thank you for that introduction, Steve. I am doing fantastic. I'm in Missouri and it is going to be 80 degrees today. I am looking forward to the weekend.
Same here. Let me look. We always look here, 67 and sunny in the New York area. And I don't know what it is. Springtime, when you hit like 67 here, it feels like 80. So
yeah,
take that.
Exactly. Love that.
All good. So we're going to dig into what you do, a part of what you do in terms of life coaching, and that is couples counseling. And you've got really important marriage principles that we're going to run down today.
Well, I do, Steve. You know, the interesting thing about relationships is they really drive everything about us. And what we know in business is that if your intimate life is working really well for you, it's easier to make the business successful. We've always known that. So when someone shows up in my world, I can almost help them understand. I can actually get them to see and really almost guarantee the fact that their business and what they're doing for a living will become much better for them, much happier. They'll actually change the way they think about everything in their world if they can get the intimacy, the relationship, that marriage or that relationship, that person that they're living with to work really, really well. It's fascinating how our heart is. Our heart is open to being who we want to be. We are who we want to be in every single area of our life.
Interesting. Now, before we get into some of the principles, what do you often find is the main driver for failure of a marriage, or one that kind of derails it? Is it really come down to communication?
It does, but unfortunately, in every marriage, there's power. And typically there's one person that has more power than the other. And that's, I mean, just 90% of the time, that's how it is. And they can't seem to get that balance to work. And when you have an imbalance of power, you can almost call that abuse. When that's happening, it's really hard to get that in place because most of us don't recognize that we're being more powerful than we really are.
And power can come in all different forms, I'm sure.
It can be coming, you can be silent and be powerful. You can be loud and be powerful. There's lots of different things you can do to create power in the relationship. You don't have to be a bully to be powerful either. You can just be spending more money, right? Or you can be always saving more money. So it's many different ways that power shows up in the relationship, but it debilitates the ability for both of them to feel like they are actually equal in the relationship. And that's what we're working toward. And that's the last principle, by the way, called mutuality, equality. It simply means that I feel I have just as much input in this relationship as you do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip ahead. I was just asking.
That's okay. Well, let's actually start with that. Let's start with the last
Sure.
principle, and we go through them. And let me name them first before we get much further down the road.
Sure.
There is the very first principle that I don't talk a lot about is actually called commitment. We got to have a commitment with that we want to stay. Number two, what's really fascinating is that we often don't know how to be transparent about who we are, that daily communication. That's principle actually number one. Number two is authenticity, being who I'm supposed to be inside myself, being authentic, congruent. Love this one. Talk about this a lot. We've been focusing on emotions. Congruency means I'm the same inside as outside. Not very easy for most people. That's how a child is. Third is love and respect. That's the most powerful one when we're talking about the separation of how men and women think about the world. The next to the last one, number five, is forgiveness. This is a really hard one because forgiveness affects everything about us. It's our ability to law of allowing, ability to let go of the past and the current. And then the last one is mutuality. Mutuality is my most favorite. I love that. Is my favorite one because it's where you are always losing something in the relationship, but you're gaining more than you're losing. I love that principle because there's things about the person you're in a relationship with that are never going to be perfect for you. And you learn how to work with those, but you're gaining, you have more value in the relationship than those small things that you're losing.
Interesting. All right. So why don't we pick one of those and start drilling down?
Well, let's start with authenticity. It's one of my favorite ones. Authenticity means that when you are being authentic in a relationship, it means that you are actually being the person that you want to be in the moment. That means that authentically, I am angry. Authentically, I am sad. Authentically, I am not happy. Authentically, I just want to go outside and play, or I just want to be left alone. Authenticity is allowing the other person to be who they are in the moment without asking them to change who they are. It's a difficult principle, but the reason we talk about that is that, I'm just trying to be better. No, even when you're bad, you're your authentic self. So learning how this principle works actually allows the person to be more with what's happening with the other person. For example, when I'm authentically unhappy, I just want to be left alone. There's nothing wrong with that. And so if we understand that I am being who I want to be in the moment, or I'm struggling with something in the moment, your willingness to let that just to be true is so valuable because it honors who I want to be, because I want to move back toward the relationship.
With the authenticity, is there a direct connection to honesty?
There is. Now, I can be truthful and I can be honest. But with honesty, I can be honestly wrong, but I can't be truthfully wrong. So I don't use the word honesty. I usually truthful. Truthful means that we speak in facts, which means it's true. It's not how I feel about it. It's just true, because emotions kind of get in the way. I mean, maybe we talked about this before, but let's interject the word reparation. This is actually in the forgiveness piece, but repairing harm in the relationship is where love is actually kindled. For example, if we don't fall out of love, it's kind of a weird thing, we don't really fall out of love. What happens is that emotions are the results of events that are happening, right? I go to a restaurant, have a nice meal, I enjoy the restaurant. Go to a restaurant, don't have a nice meal, don't really want to go back, right? Well, my emotions about the restaurant are based on what happened while I was at the restaurant. Relationships are the same way. Since emotions drive the relationship, actually, when a relationship begins to deteriorate, they haven't created enough events to create the emotions of love in the relationship. It's that simple. However, reparation, when something harm happens and you repair that harm, we've been talking about yearnings, right? When you repair harm, that's where true love happens. When you feel like, when the repair happens, when you feel like someone understands you and they hear you and they know you, it creates this feeling of just love in the relationship. So that ability to repair the relationship creates this bond that is fantastic. So reparation is a very important part of understanding how to keep that love alive. And these 6 principles actually always work toward repairing the relationship.
I want to tell everybody we're talking with life coach Dan Clark, and you can find him at transformedlife.net. Now, you just mentioned before that it's events that help kindle the relationship, because that's kind of the baseline for the emotions and different things go on. When you talk about events, what do you mean?
Well, an event could be going out to dinner, or it could be just holding their hand, or spending time with them, or watching a movie. And those events actually are very powerful, but you can't have enough of those kind of events to actually make the relationship survive, because that doesn't mean you're actually repairing the relationship when difficulties happen. So the big events, which are when things don't go well, are the most powerful thing in the relationship. What doesn't get repaired stays in the relationship, and it kind of builds like a pile of dirt. Those relationships continue to create on top of one another. One of the ways to know that you're not solving conflict is if you can't remember what the last conflict was about, because it was so big. I don't know if we thought about it, but it was so big. That's because you're not repairing the relationship.
That's an interesting point, because one would think it's the other way around, that, I don't remember what it was because we moved past it. Right?
No, we won't be able to remember, because if we have, again, there's solvable conflict and unsolvable conflict in relationship, right? Conflict, that's all going to happen, right? She's always going to be this way and he's always going to be that way. Like, she's always going to leave her shoes everywhere, right? He's never going to pick his clothes up. So those are these unsolvable conflicts that you agree early on, which is what forgiveness is about, that these things that that they're true, but they're not taking away from the relationship. It's just something that you want that they're not able to do. Because again, in this principle, it's not about relationship ending behavior. See, there's relationship ending behavior and then relationship endearing behavior. And we all know what relationship ending behavior is. If you do that often enough, I'm not going to want to be around, right? If this is happening a lot, I'm not going to be here. So that's relationship ending. And understanding how that works means that when we get to the place where we're seeing a lot of relationship ending behavior, we're not repairing very well. And of course, we know what the big ones are when it comes to that also. But relationship endearing behavior is more important. We must be putting things into the relationship for us to go really well, which takes us into the principle about transparency. And transparency means that I'm willing to share with you the details about what's happening inside me because it's safe to be with you. If I can't share with you what I like and don't like about my day or the world or what's happening with our children or my job or what I don't like about you, if I can't share those things, and I'm holding those things back. So withholding words from the relationship are very difficult because those build up. That's why transparency, one of the principles, is very, very important to understand how that works in keeping the relationship close together.
Yeah, it's totally clear to see if somebody's not going to reveal themselves, what's inside of them. It could even be a situation from, let's say, your childhood. Something happened and you just,
exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the principle about transparency is using words about this is what's true about me, right? And you don't use the word we in transparency. Well, we should. No, I want to, because the relationship isn't about us. It's about how well you're doing in the relationship. Because if you can own who you are, that's why these are so powerful. If you own who you are, then it becomes us. But right now, especially when there's things that aren't going well, it's never about us. It's about what you need to do. I experience it. It's my transparency, what I like or what I don't like about the relationship. For example, in transparency, everyone makes a list of the things that they like and they dislike about the partner. Well, okay, why? Because if you don't know what's true, you don't know what's true, right? And understanding the dislikes are just a dislike. Like, I hate that when you do that. Well, actually, how about we just practice disliking it? It's a lot easier just to dislike it and move past it, right?
Wow. Pretty deep stuff we're going. We went deep last week. We're back there again. But so helpful, to move a relationship along and make it a positive thing. What are some of the other principles?
Well, the other one is love and respect. This is one that's very fascinating because men and women think differently. Men and women both need to be respected, but a man has a high level of respect that's different than a female. For example, if you see a bunch of men sitting around a table talking, they're so respectful. One man will talk and then they'll all have the same topic and then the other one will talk. It's just this respect of how we treat each other. You see women having a conversation, it's like they'll change topics and they're all over the place. Men in respect need to be heard. In other words, if you interrupt a man while he's talking, that's disrespectful. Most women don't know that. Now, if you'll ever notice how you are with guys when you're talking with them, we don't interrupt each other. We wait until they're done talking. Women don't do that. And the reason they don't do that is because that's how their brains are structured. They just have a lot more activity on the inside of their brain, and they actually have a lot more thoughts. I'll throw this out there because I don't know if I talked about this before, but women have 7 thoughts at a time. Men have 1.
Wow.
And it's well documented for that to be true. And so what that means is that they have to pick which thought they want to share with us, right? And so women, if they're changing boxes too fast, we can't keep up. So the other side about respect is that women want to feel loved. Now, obviously, men want to feel loved too, but most often you hear a woman say, "I just don't feel like you love me." Well, that's a buzzword saying that she hasn't told you what her real needs are, because women think that we know. Like if you see women talking, they're like, "Well, he should know that," or they just understand each other in this really weird energy way, they kind of get each other and they think that we're going to get it too. So in this process of love, you have to teach a woman that she has to tell him what you need because he does not know. For him to love you, he specifically has to know what it is that you really need, because we don't know. Turning that around, men have to practice teaching their wives or in the relationship that they're in when they feel disrespected, because women don't see it either. So this is where we start with transparency, authenticity, congruency, love and respect. We're building so that they recognize that they can actually now talk about these things without being offended and being harmed. It's a slide. And when you get these principles down, the relationship just goes so well.
It is that, I think what you just said, you nailed, I think, the major reason why a lot of relationships fail. And that is where each one does not say what they need or want. It's more of, you did this and you did that. And then it just kind of sits there instead of saying, this is what I need. All right, I'm unhappy. This is what I need. And then if it doesn't take place, right?
Well, yeah, I'm unhappy. Instead of what you're doing, it's more about how I'm experiencing the relationship. Is why we're talking about congruency. I mean, again, these principles kind of make sense as you flip flow through them because we're talking about what you're experiencing first, and you're just simply sharing that with that person. Now, the next to the last principle is one also I think that's difficult, and I don't want to get too far into this and not hit it because forgiveness is the one that takes the longest. When I'm working with a couple, and actually I've done this as a class too, but when I'm working with someone and talking about forgiveness, this is the big one, because anything that you have that you've not forgiven someone in the past for, I promise you that energy will show up in the marriage relationship. When I'm working with a couple, there is more time away with each other. For me, I spend more time individually than together because they must. Who wouldn't want to be married to the most wonderful woman in the world or the most wonderful man? I mean, think about it. Seriously, we are learning how to be individuals who bring to the table something that they want, because I'm turning into that man or that woman who is really easy to get along with. I flow, I'm transparent, I'm congruent, I feel my feelings, I'm able to say what I want. But the forgiveness inside me from the past will always show up. And so in this particular principle, we work specifically on what are the things that you hold against your partner? What are the things that you don't like against them, about them, like the dislike list? What are the things that you just really despise about them? That's a key, because that means that that is a harm that happened to you someplace in the past. It's not about them.
So what you're saying, Dan, is what you're holding inside or not forgiving from the past before you even, let's say, even you met your spouse is something that's can be detrimental to the relationship.
No, it is detrimental. It's like you come to the relationship with all these baggages, and you don't see them, but they're back there. And so we're going to turn around and look at them. Now, it's not actually about forgiveness when you're working with me, because sometimes someone doesn't want to work on their past, and we don't have to, but we do need to recognize that anything that you have a big difficulty with is because you haven't learned how to forgive or let go. So if you can learn how to let go of the stuff that's in the past, you can tremendously change the relationship. Now, here's the fascinating part about forgiveness. It is not an emotion.
It's a feeling.
We talked about feelings and emotions last week. And so it's an emotion. It's not a feeling.
So it's not an emotion, but it's an emotion.
Feelings and emotions are different.
Yes.
So it's not a feeling. I feel like you don't forgive me. No, I feel forgiven. Feeling labels it. Emotions, you feel it. So if you actually, the reason it's not an emotion is because you don't have to feel like you forgive them. You just have to follow through on the laws of forgiveness. And the law of forgiveness is that I refuse to allow what's happening right now to continue to affect me in the future. I refuse to allow what's happened in the past to affect me in the future. I put it in a place that when it shows up, the emotions that are attached, I release them. I make sure that I make my mind up in the moment, that when I get triggered and something isn't going well for me in a relationship and I feel like that I'm just overwhelmed, it's because I am holding on to things that have nothing to do with this relationship. And so I turn around and look at what's back there, and I refuse to allow anything in my past to affect who I am today. Now, if I'm playing basketball, I'm going to shoot a lot of free throws, right? If I'm practicing forgiveness, I'm reminding my brain what I want it to do. So this is a high level, moving away from emotions, talking to yourself in a way that actually creates the pattern that you want, because your brain will do what you tell it to. This is the most difficult principle because most of us want to feel it. No, at some point, I don't really care how you feel, because that's just a product of past. What we really want is for you to understand that you have to tell your brain how you want to feel. I'm not going to let this continue to affect me. And it doesn't mean you don't need to solve the difficulties, but emotions are so powerful that they create inside us the idea that we're not loved or they don't care about us. All this crazy language that shows up, as opposed to it's just, I don't like this.
So we've talked about this briefly before, but I want to bring it to the forefront once again. When we're reminding ourselves that what we're forgiven and we're not going to let it affect the relationship, are we verbally saying it to ourselves, or are we just thinking it?
So if I'm standing on the free throw line throwing free throws, I'm going to play a really good game on Friday and it's Tuesday. What am I doing at the free throw line? So what am I saying to myself a lot during the day? I'm letting go of this. I'm going to not let this continue to bother me. I just remind myself, it's a mantra for a couple of months, a couple of weeks. Get up in the morning, you say it. Before you go to bed, you say it. You pick the things you need to let go of. Now, there are some things that are really big. And if there's abuse, if there's emotional or physical or some type of sexual abuse or whatever abuse that's in the relationship, that is a completely different issue than this particular one. We would do that in a completely different way. That we'd separate that from this, because this is lightweight stuff. But you are just, again, reminding yourself, telling your brain what you want. For example, I think I'll have coffee. So you go have coffee, right? Your brain goes to the kitchen and start making coffee. That's exactly what forgiveness is about. Your brain goes where you tell it. After a while, it'll just go there. So it's not as, even though there's emotions attached, learning to separate yourself from the emotions. And again, we're not pushing it down when we're saying that. We're not, because when something happens and you feel hurt, when you feel hurt in the current relationship because you feel the hurt show up and you get angry about it, when you feel that, that heals the emotional attachment. But the reason you're saying, I won't let this emotion, I won't let this continue to affect me in the future, is you're simply telling your brain that when I feel it, I'm not going to carry it into the future, but I still have to feel it. See, this is where it gets confusing, because emotions have nothing to do with forgiveness. Forgiveness is a choice. I don't have a choice about emotions. They are going to show up. When something happens in the relationship, oh, that hurts so much. Oh, right. I'm never going to be able to forgive you for that. Wait a minute. When they say that, they say it's going to affect them in the future, right?
Totally. Wow. This is like pretty powerful stuff. And I want to go back to one thing you said before, the difference between men and women. If something happens along the way, let's say the husband says something to the wife, could even just be a word that she just doesn't like, whatever it might be. She doesn't forget it. It could come back years later, whereby the guy doesn't even matter. You know, she could say something to him, got him mad, and we're done with that. She will bring it back.
Any good relationship book that you read will tell you that women have these elephant brains. It is so amazing. And so that's why you separate them, because you teach them that just because it shows up doesn't mean they have to bring it to the table, right? Because it's one of those 7. So you help them be aware of that. There's an emotion attached to that, and you're learning how to put that away. They might need to say it, right? But they're holding on to that. But if they have all 7 of those thoughts in a great, healthy way, that woman is fantastic. Now, women, it's the most difficult for them to really let go of things in the past, and it's complicated because of how their brain functions, but they actually can do that. But here's the downside, Steve. Women are going to take that out on you as they're going in the relationship. So, principle. Actually, the person that you marry is similar to the first 4 years of your brain development. So the person that you're in a relationship with, married or not, they actually can help you become your best self, because you're working through the difficulties that you didn't let go of when you were a child. That's why relationships can be powerfully transformational, because you're helping each other work through the difficulties, because the unpleasant things inside you is what you attract inside them. And so the things that you don't like about each other are actually things that you have to let go of. That's why relationships can be so powerful. Now, I'm not a proponent of staying in a relationship that's abusive, but what I am saying is that work it out, because it will make you so healthy. I promise.
100%. And it's a shame that marriages do fail because the principles aren't adhered to. But I want to go back because I find this fascinating. We've talked about it before, how between 0 and 7, it kind of shapes your entire life. So you just said that the person you find or you pick to be your partner, life partner, the first 4 years of your life are based on that? Do I have that?
Yes,
right?
As a matter of fact, the science on that's pretty solid, because those are the most familiar parts of your brain, and they're unconscious. Remember, 95% of everything that you do is unconscious. So you don't actually like that person based on what you see about them. There's an energy exchange between them that you don't see that's attractive. And when that energy exchange is happening, it informs your brain that you like them. But after you've been in the relationship 2 or 3 years, you begin to notice how similar they are to someone in your past. You can't like something today that you haven't liked in the past. It's impossible. And so using that principle, when you're looking for someone that you want to marry, you always focus on the things you don't like about them first.
Wow. This is too bad we didn't know all of this a long time ago.
Oh my gosh.
Seriously. And I'm still fascinated by that. So how can you dissect that? How can you look at that? And let's say it's a past relationship, current, whatever it might be, or future. How can you look at that and say, all right, those first 4 years, I met this person, compliment.
Just think about your mom and dad.
Yeah.
Or whoever raised you. Just look at what their behavior was like and what you did or didn't like about them. I had the most wonderful parents. Probably not, right? because we attribute love to the relationship with a mom and dad because we want to, but just spend time looking at it. Now, you don't have to be specific because they're like, well, they're not exactly. No, but the things that mom and dad don't do well, your partner won't do well. Like one of them is a saver, one of them isn't. One of them doesn't do dishes or make the bed, the other one does. Whatever those things are in a relationship, if mom and dad never talk, you're not going to want to talk, right? That's how that is. If mom talked a lot, maybe you don't want to talk a lot because mom talked a lot, but you're going to marry someone according to one of the men or women in your relationship, your mom and dad, I mean.
Amazing. I think that, even leaving it bad, people are going to be thinking about that today, hearing this, seeing this, and try to connect it.
So yes, exactly. But I want to talk about one last thing before we run out of time because it's so important.
Sure.
Movies in the 1900s, 1901, hockey started. We started seeing that romance movies came out. I don't know if you've heard this principle or not, but romance movies have actually harmed more than helped our culture because in the United States, we want to feel like we're loved. We want to feel in love. Well, that feeling of love is the product of events, right? So when someone falls out of love, they feel like that the person doesn't love me anymore. And movies romanticize relationships so much that it's actually contributed to the majority of divorces that happen because people don't know how to repair the relationship when the love goes away. And this is what's so difficult in our current culture because the United States has more divorces than any other country in the world. And that's because of the ideology of not feeling, we're just thinking.
Do you think it's the expectations that we have based on those movies that we watch? We think that's what the relationship is supposed to be?
I have a whole class on that. Yeah, I always take a couple through that if I have time, because we must understand that we are influenced so much. Remember, 95% of our decision is unconscious. The things we've experienced influence how we feel. And if you're thinking that you have to be in love all the time, like I was working with a couple last night, man alive, both of them, they were exactly recognizing how they are like one of their parents and saw how their arguments really contributed to the way that they were raised. And so as they began to talk about the relationship they had with their mom and dad, it solved so many conflicts because understanding, knowledge really almost corrects everything. When you understand something, it's easier to let go of it.
So how about this in final seconds? I just want to throw this out here. What if you have two people in a marriage and their parents got divorced at a very early time, or one abandoned, one parent abandoned? Is it almost, I don't want to say a recipe for disaster, but it's, no? Okay.
It's not, because it's the energy that's in mom and dad that makes the difference. Now, if a dad left mom, right, even when the child was 1 or 2 years old, that energy that's in mom and dad is still in the brain development. So we have to really pay attention to the energy that's there.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks for saying that. Cause I'm having all these different visuals trying to put this all together, but okay.
Yeah, this is an all day conversation for sure.
Yeah, we tried to squeeze it in 30 minutes, but yeah. So it really comes down to the energy, the person that your mom and dad are or were, as opposed to what they did. That makes sense?
Correct. Yes, that's absolutely right. Oh man, you got that principle down right.
Oh, I'm glad I did, because I was getting worried for all of us, for a lot of people.
Good job.
Yeah. Dan Clark, you're amazing. He is a life coach, and he can help you with your career, with your personal life, and also with your marriage. And if somebody wants to reach to you and move things forward and improve things, what do they do?
Well, just go to my website. It's transformedlife.net. And there's a place where you can get a hold of me. I would love to have you spend time with me. I will spend time with you. First hour is on me.
Fantastic. I love the part that you said when it comes to couples counseling that all you need is one. Because usually, my perception, things I've heard, lived through it, it's couples counseling. That means you both have to be in counseling. And sometimes that's not effective because one might not want to share something while the other one is there.
Well, when you're doing couple counseling, they have a tendency to want to argue about what's happening. That's why if I have one, I can help the other one, lead them toward being kind. It's just how it is.
Amazing. Dan, always great talking with you. And
oh my God, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
All right, you bet.
Right. We'll catch you next time, and we'll be right back.
Thank you, Steve.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.